It's time for the Sports Not interview. Newsmakers and record breakers from around the world of sports join us in conversation. The latest in sports talk from the editors at sportsnot.com. And now, the Sports Not interview.
Welcome to the Sports Not interview. I am your host, Evan Grote, and today we're joined by our guest, Sean Pendergast, who is a radio host on Sports Radio 610 in Houston, covering the Houston Texans, which is our topic here today. Riding a 5-game win streak. They picked up a big win on Sunday night over the Chiefs, and Sean is here to break it all down for us. Sean, thanks so much for the time today.
Great to be with you, Evan. Thanks for having me.
You know, Sean, I was thinking about this Texans season, and they started off 0-2, and since that time, they've had some bumps along the road. They were at 3-5 at one point. Actually, they have since, like I said, won 5 straight games. And so I know you cover this team on a daily basis. I don't watch them week to week. I'm curious to get your thoughts on what has been the big change with the Texans from that time where they were 0-2, 3-5 to where they are right now, 8-5, and just one game behind the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, Evan. Not a lot has changed substantially, with one area of the team vastly improving since that start, the 0-3 start to the season, because all 3 of those losses to start the season all came down to the final 2 minutes. 2 of those games against the Rams and the Jags, they fumbled the ball deep in enemy territory late in the game. In that Tampa Bay game on Monday night, early in the season, they had Baker Mayfield dead to rights on a 4th and 11 play, and they let him slip out. He converts, he goes down, scores a touchdown. They lose by 1. I think they're just making those plays now. The defense has played at an elite level all season long. There's only 1 week this season where this defense hasn't gone into that week as the number 1 yardage and number 1 scoring defense. I think it was after the Jacksonville game when they gave up 29 points. That put them at 2nd place in the points allowed. This defense has been playing at an elite level all season. The offense has been playing at a level that you've had to manage around things, and they actually won 3 games with Davis Mills at quarterback, kind of managing things in the middle of the season. I will say this, they've gotten better at protecting the football on offense. They've gotten a little bit better at running the football situationally. So there has been improvement on the offense, and they're much better at protecting the quarterback this year than they were last year when CJ Stroud got his brains beaten in. They're much better at protecting the quarterback. So there are areas on offense they've improved at. They're going to need to play better offensively if they're going to make a deep playoff run. But this defense gives them a chance in every game that they play, especially this year in the NFL and in the AFC, especially where things are so topsy-turvy in the AFC right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up some good points there, and I want to follow up with you on both of them. Let's first start with the defense. You mentioned number 1 in terms of yards allowed per game and points allowed per game. But I just wonder, I look at this team. You talked about some of the inconsistencies on offense, although they have improved in some areas, you said. As we get into the final 4 games of the season here and hopefully, for Texans fans into the playoffs, do you think it's too much to ask for this defense to just week after week continue to put this team on its shoulders and carry them to victory?
Probably to the extreme degree that it's been. Look, they've had games this year where the offense has gone completely radio silent for the entire half. We saw it in the Kansas City game. They went 3 and out 4 straight times in the third quarter. They had 12 total plays in the third quarter of that game for -2 yards. That's what made Andy Reid's decision to go for it on 4th and 1 in his own territory so baffling. Your defense was dominating, and the game was tied. You weren't behind. The Denver game, albeit that was the game where CJ Stroud got knocked out and Davis came in unexpectedly. But Davis was a complete 0 in the second half of that game. The Buffalo game, on Thursday Night Football a few weeks ago, they had 35 total yards in the second half of games. So they have really, look, DeMeco Ryans is a defensive guy. This team plays defense the way DeMeco Ryans, the player, played defense, with his hair on fire, hitting everything that's in its sight, but also very smart. It's a smart defense. Like you saw on the Sunday night game, they don't bite on play action anymore. They sniff out screens. Like it's not just the big hits that you see like Jalen Petrie and Azeez Al-Shaair, guys like that. This is a very well-coached, smart defensive unit. So they welcome that smoke that you're talking about. If you were to ask anybody on that defense, they say, "Yeah, let's go, man. We'll take the whole thing." I just don't think. Look, once you get in the playoffs, these are good teams every week. And right now, the odds are the Texans are going to be on the road in the playoffs unless the Jags stub their toes somewhere along the way. I think that's a lot to ask of this defense. They'll welcome the challenge, but I just think at some point the math and regression, all those things catch up to you at some point.
Yeah, I agree. It's a lot to ask week after week. And another thing that defense does really well is take the football away. They're number 2 right now in turnover differential in the league. In preparation for this interview, I was thinking about this Texans team a little bit and how good this defense has been for them. And I was thinking about other teams throughout the years who have, made deep playoff runs, even gone to the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl in some cases with a more defensive oriented team with maybe not such a stellar offense. And I was thinking about the 2000 Ravens, and I'm not comparing this Texans team or defense to that 2000 Ravens team where they had Trent Dilfer at quarterback.
Yeah.
But I look around the landscape of the AFC and the playoff picture. Should they get in, which if the season ended today, they would be in. And I do think they will eventually get in there when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
But given the inconsistencies on the offense, do you think that they could make a deep run in the playoffs with this defense?
Yeah, well, I mean, a deep run is winning 2 games. Look, they've never done that before. Like they've never made the AFC title game before. That was the stated goal from DeMeco Ryans this offseason. Was he's gotten to that divisional round twice. His first 2 years they won the division, they won a playoff game, and then they go on the road to either Baltimore and Kansas City and they lose. So DeMeco Ryans, he said, we got to get to new heights, and that's at least getting to the AFC title game. I absolutely think they can. Even if they were the 7 seed right now, if you think about it, they would go right now on the road to play New England, who's an underdog at home this weekend to Buffalo.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people out there, Mike Vrabel's done an incredible job. Drake May has been awesome this year. I think people think that 11-2 record is a little phony based on their lack of strength of schedule. They have by far the easiest schedule in the NFL this year. And then if the Texans were to win that, they would go on the road to play Denver. Look, they probably should have beaten Denver here. CJ Stroud doesn't get concussed in the second quarter of that game. I got to assume they're going to score a touchdown at some point in that game and not kick 5 field goals like they did in that loss to the Broncos. Drake May's never played in a playoff game. Yep. Bo Nix is 0-1 in the playoffs. I'll even throw Trevor Lawrence in there at the 3 seed right now. He's been to the playoff 1 time. He's 1-1. CJ Stroud has won 2 playoff games already. He's won twice as many playoff games as those three guys combined. So I think, honestly, the one I'd be most fearful of going on the road to go play would be if the Ravens happen to sneak in as the AFC North team. And then you got to go play, the last thing I think the rest of the AFC wants to see is Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes somehow sneak back into the playoff picture, and then you catch them on some sort of heater. You know what I mean? So if you ask me, can this Texans team go on the road? And right now, the ultimate thing you would have to do based on the standings would be win at New England and win at Denver. I absolutely think they can do that. As long as CJ Stroud plays a B to B+ kind of game and doesn't turn the ball over, they can win those games.
Yeah. And to your point about CJ Stroud, I do want to ask you about him a little bit here. He's in year 3 now, and we know he had that really good rookie season, but I think most Texans people would tell you that he hasn't quite taken that next step to, that next level, whatever that level might be. Maybe not elite level, but I don't even think he's top 10 to 15 right now. Now you may disagree with that, but why is it that he just hasn't quite gotten there yet in year 3 after that great rookie season?
Yeah, I think I would say specific to this year, he's in a new offense this year. So there was a burn-in period for everybody with that at the beginning of the year. That certainly had something to do with their slow start. He has started to look more in control of this offense. The week before he got concussed against the Broncos, they played the 49ers, and he had maybe his best game as a pro in that game. He was 30 of 38 for over 300 yards and was just getting the ball out fast. He's had to grow. CJ is a guy who came in from Ohio State, loving to take those big swings and look at the deep ball. And this offense this year has been, CJ calls it death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's a lot of quick game, get it out fast, run the ball to make sure you're in 2nd and 6 and 3rd and 3, not 2nd and 13 like they were last year all the time due to penalties and TFLs. So there's been some of that, an adjustment period to this new offense. But just in general, I think, yeah, he was damn near elite his rookie year. I mean, he was certainly a top 10 quarterback that year. I think there was a period of time in season 2 for him last year, from about week 7 through 9, where they played the Packers, they played the Colts at home, and then they went on the road on Halloween night and played the New York Jets, a team they never should have lost to. They made Aaron Rodgers for one half look like the old Aaron Rodgers. Those 3 games, CJ was hit more than any 3-game period in his professional career. And I remember watching it, Evan, at the time, and I'm saying, boy, by the end of that 3 games, he was operating differently, and not in a good way. Like, his feet were messed up. You could tell he was kind of gun shy, or just seeing ghosts, maybe they like to say. And I think it took a long time for him to kind of recover from that period. I don't think he'd never been hit, even on the worst of weeks for the Texans through the first season and a half. He'd never been hit as much as he was those 3 games. So I think that I won't say irreparable damage, because I think he's kind of come back from that. I mean, you saw some of the plays he made on Sunday. His overall numbers weren't great, but he made 3 or 4 plays in that Chiefs game that the very few guys can make. He's got a tremendous arm talent. So I think it's a combination of last year, kind of that scalded dog thing where he was just hit so much all year long, but especially that period of time in the middle of the season. And then I think there was a burn-in period with him and Nick Caley getting on the same page.
Yeah, it takes time when you're changing coordinators and changing schemes. Final thing I have for you, and I was looking at the schedule, that AFC South battle is shaping up to be a real good one with the Jags and Texans, and even the Colts there. We can't count them out yet. Who knows what Philip Rivers is going to bring to the table. I was actually listening to your show a bit today and heard you guys talking about that.
Yeah.
But, it's shaping up pretty good schedule-wise for Texans. They've got the Cardinals this week, the Raiders and the Chargers, and then that, like I said, possibly the Philip Rivers led Colts in the season finale there. Realistically, do you think that the Texans could afford to lose one more game? I would think that 11 wins would still be enough to get them into the playoffs. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Seth Payne, my co-host, and I, Seth's a former Texan, and we mess around with that. The Athletic, the New York Times playoff, the thing where you put in the specific games and what are the percentages. And we've messed around with every different permutation of the Texans winning and losing this game and that game. They're in really good shape right now. I mean, honestly, I think anything less than 3-1 would be a massive disappointment, because it would mean that they've lost a home game along the way. 3 of their last 4, not only are they against easier opponents, because until we see what Philip Rivers is, I count the Colts as being one of those teams that's more like a 4 or 5 win team than an 8-win team like they are right now. So they've got the as you said, Evan, they've got the Cards, the Raiders these next 2 weekends, both at home, at the Chargers, which is not a great home field advantage in LA for the Chargers. And then they've got, I would imagine, a ton of Texan fans are going to travel to that game during the Christmas break. Texan fans travel, for a team that's never made a conference title game, Texan fans travel pretty good. And especially when it's going to LA, you're not asking them to go to Green Bay in December. You're going to Los Angeles. That's a nice trip. So I think the Texan fans will rep well there. And then you got the Colts, and that game is back here in Houston. So anything less than 3-1 would be a massive disappointment. I think at 11-6, they're very safe. I do think there's a good chance they're going to need to win out to win the division. They're a game back of the Jags already. The Jags have a very easy schedule, comparable to the Texans. I mean, they've got the Jets this weekend. They're at the Broncos, which is their hard game. But then they too play the Colts, and then they close the season against Tennessee. So their schedule is not all that tough. But if the Texans run the table, very doable. The Jags, if they go 3-1, as long as the one loss is against Denver, Indy, or Tennessee, the Texans will win the division on tiebreakers. So they're in decent shape. Look, any 4-game parlay where you're going on the money line in the NFL is a risk. Like, anything can happen.
True.
But honestly, if you don't if you lose to either the Cardinals or the Raiders at home the next 2 weeks, you don't deserve to win the division. So I think they're going to win both those games. I don't think the defense will allow them to lose either of those games. The big one is the Chargers game. I would say, again, depending, this Philip Rivers thing is such a wild card. I've got to see it before I know whether or not to take the Colts seriously. That Chargers game is a big one because they're one of the teams that's ahead of the Texans right now in that playoff hunt. So that'll be a big one. But if they win that Chargers game, they're in great shape tiebreaker wise. The fact that 3 of their 5 losses are over to NFC teams, the Bucs, the Rams, and the Seahawks, means that a lot of these tiebreakers that are division and conference driven and whatnot are skewing towards the Texans right now. And they've got head-to-head wins over the Ravens and the Bills, the Chiefs,
Yep.
If they beat the Chargers, a head-to-head win. I know the Ravens and the Chiefs are outside the playoff hunt right now, but if they start to sneak back in and the Texans happen to drop one here along the way, you do have that cushion right now of having head-to-head. So they're in phenomenal shape right now. Look, 3 weeks ago when they were 5-5 and needed a last-second field goal to beat the Titans, if you were to tell me that people nationally would want to be talking about the Texans, and honestly, some of the people we see talking about them like they've got a legitimate shot with this defense to get to a Super Bowl, I would have said you were crazy, but here we are.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to have plenty to talk about in the next few weeks on your show. And do us a favor, before I let you out of here, tell us when and where we can hear you.
Yeah, so on the Odyssey app is probably the easiest way for people outside of Houston to listen. The free Odyssey app. We're part of the Odyssey family. Sports Radio 610. Just search on that. Seth and I are on from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Central Time. Payne and Pendergast is the name of the show. Our two last names. So yeah, you can find us there 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. I also do pregame and postgame for the Texans. If you're a Texan fan listening outside of Houston, I believe they stream the pregame and the postgame within NFL parameters. You know, there's a blackout period and whatnot, but for most of it, you can hear it on the Odyssey app too. We have fun doing pregame and postgame. So yeah, that's where you can hear us. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Check them out. Sean Pendergast, Sports Radio 610 in Houston. Thank you so much for your time today.
Anytime, Evan. Hope we get to do it again.